when those guys were available? It seemed like you pretty much knew what you wanted. It was an easy decision at that point.
Well, that's our job. I mean, Gary Sachs does an unbelievable job. He doesn't get enough credit. But from a scouting standpoint, Gary, Fab, myself, Jason P. and Betty, the people that work day in and day out, I think I talked about this with Madeline. There is no decision to make. If you're doing your job, you don't get into debates in the draft room. You set your rankings by position, you set them overall, and then you do your tiers. We had Travis Leslie as a tier 6 guy, and we were in tier 8. So you just don't leave him on the board. With Trey Tompkins, he was in tier 4. We were picking in tier 6 at that time. You don't leave him on the board, you take him. And we found that that's, recipes for success for us. So you don't get caught up in draft fever and second guess an entire year's worth of work. We've been watching Trey Tompkins and Travis Leslie for 3 years. I mean, they weren't hiding. They were in the SEC. So you don't second guess yourself when you're on the clock with 90 seconds to make a pick. You take the guy that you've been working on for months.
Do you remember the last time there was a bona fide dispute where there was not blood in the wall or anything, but where it kind of came down to that where
I do, and this is when we started doing, the tiers,
the tiers, yeah.
And really living up to them. I think when DeAndre Jordan was available, we hadn't worked him out. Nobody really had paid attention to him. Mike was here. He had kind of heard the name, but we all thought he was a lottery, mid-first round talent, so they didn't pay a lot of attention to them. Gary had scouted him through the high school events. I had coached him at ABCD camp, but it wasn't something we were focused on. We were looking actually at that point at Mike Taylor, and he played well in Orlando, and I won't mention it, but it's someone who's no longer here, and it's not Mike. It's someone else that decided that would be a good time to put the bug in Mike's ear about taking Mike Taylor at 35, and that was immediately shut down unequivocally by Gary and I. And that was a stand-on-the-table moment for both of us that, we would walk out of the room if we didn't take DeAndre Jordan. So, we promised Mike we'd get another pick, and, later in the draft we did take a look at Mike.
Right.
But we certainly weren't leaving DeAndre Jordan on the board. And since then we figured, I think the tiers and making sure they're evident to everybody on a big board in the front of the room is the way to go.
Did you come close at all to thinking about making a move into the first round, and did any trade discussions become serious at all?
We had a lot of trade discussions leading up to this. We've been trying to drive the market as much as we could. We've obviously got a specific goal in mind, and unless we can accomplish that goal, we're gonna wait, and we're gonna be patient. And tonight we didn't have any interest in moving to the first round. Ironically, if we had moved into the early 20s, we probably would have taken Trey Tompkins anyway. He was rated that high on our board, but Vinny, myself, Gary, Mr. Sterling, Andy, we've all discussed it. To throw a cap hold on your books and eat into $12 million in room and maybe take you out of a marquee free agent or the ability to absorb an uneven deal in a trade, there just wasn't enough impact at that number in the draft. And like I said, we had Travis and we had Trey, rated well ahead of where we selected at 37. So, we're lucky to get both those guys. They're both guys, can make our team, they can impact our team, and, they can continue to grow with the young core we've put together.
When you see Kyrie Irving go number 1, and that could have been a Clipper pick, is there any seller's remorse at this point?
Well, for the people that, first of all, I think the media, everyone here should understand something. We were 21-39 prior to the trade. We were picking 6th. Okay, the reason we picked 8th and got the ping pong balls we got was because we went 11-11 after the trade. We were a better team after the trade, was why we made the trade to begin with. The second thing is there is no remorse. We made the deal knowing there was an eventuality that it could be the number 1 pick in the draft. The alternate consideration would have been the Minnesota pick, which myself, Gary, Fab, Vinny, we dug into that draft long before we ever made that trade. And in our mind, and for gurus like Frank, who are probably well ahead of, they're probably on the 2015 class, they know the 2012 class, based on the college kids that are still in school and the potential high school kids that could be one-and-done guys, would far surpass it in terms of the value to our franchise. Maybe not to somebody else's, but we're pretty high on Mo Williams. The guy was an all-star. And we drafted Eric Bledsoe at 18, and he was on the all-rookie team. So we think we're pretty good at that position. And, like I said, the ability to do deals, and this is something we have to keep in mind. From an asset standpoint, when we get into this offseason, and you start looking ahead to 2012 and free agency, and you start looking ahead at, guys you might be able to acquire, we think that the Minnesota pick as a sweetener in that deal, when you look at the model of what New York accomplished to get Carmelo, what New Jersey had to use to get Darren Williams, we're going to need an asset like the Minnesota pick to get into those conversations. And that's one of the other reasons we held on to it.
How important is it for this team just to play? Just to be able to to gel into play and not take a year off, let's say, you know? And maybe you don't have to answer the second part of that question, but that's
Well,
what
it's
I'm going
hard.
at.
I mean, you know, we gotta handle business on a daily basis right now. I give the players credit. They've been in here in May and June and things, and we have a lot of areas we need to improve, and we know that, but our guys are working and they're developing, and let's just see how it all comes together. But, you know, I expect our guys to come in shape and be ready to go whenever that is.
You know, I think the other thing, you know, what we've been focused on in terms of moves and why we've been patient and why we didn't, you know, get draft fever tonight and, you know, make a move to make a move that doesn't take us to the next step is, again, what we were after the trade deadline. We were 11-11. That's with Eric Gordon, who sucked it up, and he was a monster. Okay, the guy played with a fractured wrist and strained ligaments the entire, you know, second half of the season. You got Chris Kaman, who missed 50 games and really wasn't a factor for us after the All-Star break, and we're still 11-11. So, you know, you add Eric Gordon back at 100%, who was playing at an All-Star level and was the 7th leading scorer in the league before he got hurt. You add in Chris Kaman, who, you know, people are catching amnesia, but a year ago the guy was 20-10 and was an All-Star. You know, along with DJ getting better, along with Blake, you know, getting better, who lives in the gym, and, you know, and all of a sudden Farouk, who's made a huge jump, and Bledsoe everybody's talking about. So we're happy with, we're not content to be where we are, but as far as being one piece away, we're still one piece away, but it's not going to be the wrong piece. We're going to be patient and make sure it's the right piece. And again, that's where the Minnesota pick comes into play, because when you get a chance to hit a home run, you better have the assets to do it. You know, if New Jersey hadn't have had their pick, if the Knicks hadn't have had the assets they had, they don't end up with Carmelo Anthony. So to give away tools to make deals like that, it's counterproductive.
You just talked about the names Carmelo and Darren, and those are probably top 10, 15 players in the league. So is that kind of where you're looking as far as your sights are set on not just a very good player, one of the top players?
I mean, it has to be. I mean, you know, you're always trying to get the best players you can for your roster. You know, you're trying to surround Blake. We've talked about this. We're trying to surround Blake and Eric with the best possible pieces for the next, you know, 5 to 7 years. You start there. You work your way down. You find the best fit for your team. Best fit, you know, that complements our, you know, Vinny's coaching style and our style of play. But, you know, anytime you have the ability to have assets, which we're lucky enough to have right now, to get into those conversations, you know, you don't. I mean, look, we wake up today the number one pick, you know, is Kyrie's going to be terrific. We wake up tomorrow morning with one of the best assets from a trade standpoint in this league, which is the unprotected Minnesota pick in 2012. So, you know, that's when the offseason comes and we start looking to do deals. We've got every asset we could possibly have in this franchise.
Which means, and I've listened to everything that you both had to say, that you are looking at, and I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just trying to be factual, you're looking at the 2012 season more so to over the top to make the final pieces fit than you currently are at this given moment in time.
No, it's inaccurate. There are players we can pursue, like the Knicks pursued Carmelo, like New Jersey pursued Darren Williams.
But doesn't the current climate of CBA cut into anything you can do, though?
We're not answering any questions about that.
No, I'm just saying, but
we're not answering it, we're not commenting, we're not going to dance around it.
Nothing can be done if that takes place. That's what I'm saying.
We're not touching on that subject matter tonight, and I'm sorry.
In any shape or form.
Oh, well, I appreciate
I'm not articulate enough to talk about it without talking about it, so...
No, it's okay.
So we're talking about Phil Jackson's
getting back to
retired.
the original question, you're with cap room and with the unprotected pick, which should be high with all of the young players that Minnesota just took in the draft. They're not going to win all that many games for your sake, hopefully. That leaves that time frame and window a year from now as a major player into doing lots of things, perhaps.
Right. I think that the time frame is from tomorrow morning until we complete the team. The way we want to complete it for a long, successful run. We've talked about sustainable growth, sustainable success. That's what Vinny wants to build. Mr. Sterling, that's what I want to build. That's what the entire organization wants to be about. It's the first time probably in franchise history we've got, for the lack of a better term, a guy. We've got a franchise player. We've got, you know, Eric Gordon as well. So you don't want to use your ammo on something that isn't going to take you to the next level.
No, but you have that in reserve, although you have possibilities along the way prior to